Buenos dias. Welcome to everyone here at the Teatro Fernán Gómez in Madrid and to those around the world on the web. The New York Times is delighted to collaborate with the city of Madrid and bring luminaries from film, theater, television, and music here for a weekend of Times Talks, and also to premiere film screenings like this one. This afternoon's Times Talks is a discussion of the award-winning film Beasts of the Southern Wild, which made its Madrid debut here today. The film, which opened the San Sebastian Film Festival Friday night, was first seen at the 2012 Sundance Film Festival, where it won the Grand Jury Prize. Both New York Times chief film critics weighed in on the film, calling it a blast of sheer, improbable joy, and among the best films to play at the festival in 2 decades. We're thrilled to have the director of this fascinating film here tonight to talk about it and how it was made with New York Times media columnist David Carr, who many of you know not only for his must-read media columns and his profiles of cultural figures in the Times, but also as a character in the film Page One, A Year Inside the New York Times. We're so delighted to be able to introduce David Carr and our very special guest, the director of Beasts of the Southern Wild, Benh Zeitlin.
Ben, if they could, they'd all come sit in your lap and hug you and tell you what a great film you made. Lo siento para mi español. Tengo las palabras, pero gramático no. I was at Sundance when your film premiered, and I fled the theater immediately afterwards because I didn't want anyone to ruin it for me. So I'm hoping that we'll get through our talk today without rubbing any of the magic off of your movie. In the movie, Wink says to Quevenchain's character, you're going to be the queen of the whole bathtub.
The king.
The king. It was translated as Queen La Reina, and the king. And it turns out to be true. So did you always know that right from the start?
That she was going to be the king?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it was. We knew. I think I knew the ending early, but I didn't know why the ending ended how it did. I remember seeing kind of in my head her facing down the aurochs, and I remember seeing her kind of leading the community through the water, into the future. And then it took figuring out how does she become that hero? Like, what is that heroic deed? Was much harder to figure out, but I sort of knew that she was going to sort of take her place on the throne like that.
So in story terms, you had to work that out. You had to figure out how does she become deserving of the crown that you place on her. But then there's the casting issue. You have to find an actor that's worthy, and that was no piece of cake. That was not easy.
No. We had like a mass army of people scavenging South Louisiana for this person. It took about 9 months, and we looked at 4,000 kids and, banking on a miracle, because you sort of set out to say, I'm going to make a movie and the king of the bathtub is going to be 6 years old, and we're going to put this film on her shoulders. You know, we were looking for examples. You know, I remember telling people, well, Drew Barrymore was 6 in E.T. We can do this, you know.
Right.
You know,
But
we didn't know. And
the typical Hollywood trick is to get a 10 or 12-year-old that's really little.
yeah, no, I know.
That seems like they're 6.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was actually 5 when you first met her. She's just an itty-bitty.
Yeah, no, I know, yeah. We tried to, you know, I originally wrote the character older, and it was actually in that casting process, we would see 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds, and we'd see them say the lines that she says, and it's not true. You know, it's, when you hit 9 or 10, you start to think differently, and, you know, a 10-year-old saying, my daddy has turned into a tree, is way different from a 6-year-old saying it. When you're 6,
Right.
that's this kind of spiritual wisdom. When you're 10, you know, there's something wrong.
Seems cheesy.
Yeah, you know, and so it was a slow and horrifying realization as we did the casting that the age of the character kept on coming down, and then eventually I knew that this girl was 6, that the way that she thought is the way that a 6-year-old thinks, and so, you know, we just went for it, you know.
But how did you know what a 6-year-old thought? Nothing
yeah.
she says clanks. It's all true.
Yeah,
all
I mean,
rings true.
I love kids that age. That's part of it. I used to teach a class to kids teaching the movie making, and the 6-year-olds were the best actors because they're completely unself-conscious. They're not thinking about what the rest of the world thinks about them. They're just expressing themselves in a very pure way. And you know, I had this group of first-grade girls, I remember, in one of those classes, and we made this film about nature, and a lot of the lines in the film come from things that they said, you know, pretending to be lions and mice and stuff, and sort of passing wisdom on to one another. And so it's just the type of thinking, it's, you know, it's this age before you learn that you have to have a job, and, you know, that everybody dies, and all these sort of harsh realities set in. You're still kind of, you know, there's this wonder to the world, and you haven't accepted the explanations you're gonna get given yet, and so you just have this very, you know, this very kind of special mind that sees things in a purely emotional way, and that's sort of what we ended up being kind of the key to figuring out how she becomes this hero. Is it's these emotional, this emotional wisdom that she has, and these emotional obstacles that she conquers.
But how do you, so she's super talented and she's a great cast, but how do you bring that out of her? What do you say to her? I'm wondering what she is, when she's giving this performance, and you know, it's amazing that she cries those big lumpy tears at the end, but I'm thinking more of the middle part of the film when she's like taking her dad's measure. How sick are you? Are you leaving me? And there's just a knowingness in her, and so I'm wondering what you did in terms of directing. Was it just light a fuse and run away, or were you super directive, or what did you do?
It was, I think it was sort of like being a football coach. It was a lot of, it wasn't, you know, you're not getting, in a way it's good practice for a director, because, you know, I think oftentimes you over-intellectualize what you're giving to an actor as their motivation, and, you know, so you have to talk very simply, and you have to sort of just speak very emotionally. But it wasn't like she was just sort of wandering on the set and doing anything. I mean, we worked on the character for 3 months. I would tell her the story as a kind of children's book, and I would reference back to, you know, this is where we are in Hush Puppy's story. And so all those things about, you know, she really did understand what she was doing. It's just that the way that we would get to that place was often, as opposed to like talking out the psychology of the character, you know, she'd come up to me, I'd tell her, you know, this is a scene where, you know, you're really angry, and she would say to me, all right, well, am I yellow angry, red angry, or purple angry?
Right.
And I would say, what's the highest anger? And she said, well, purple's the highest. I said, okay, well, I want purple. And she was like, no, you don't want purple. You don't even want to see purple. I'll give you red, but no purple.
Rojo.
You know, so the language
Solamente
is different.
rojo.
Yeah. Yeah, so the language changes, but it's the same process, you know.
One of the things I wonder about, and it probably comes from watching the film a third time, but I wondered if in her little mind, she figured out that I'm not just playing a hero. In fact, in real life, all these people around me are depending on me.
Oh, she knew, yeah.
She knew?
Yeah, she knew. She knew how to shut down the set if she wanted to, and light it back up if she wanted to. You know, she really thrived in that position, and you know, she was the head. She truly was the head of you know, when your actor is 6, the whole production becomes tied to that experience. You know, if you become cranky and tired and hungry, and those things have massive ramifications. You know, on the whole system, and so, yeah, you know, she really was at the very core of that. But she was. So
did you spend a lot of time on your haunches, bent down?
Oh yeah. Yes. No, my catcher squat got really good. You know, you direct at 4 feet and you shoot at 4 feet, and everything becomes about being 4 feet tall.
Are your knees a little sore?
No, they're good. They're good. I've recovered. She's also taller now, so.
I wonder what she thought of the movie. What was her feedback?
It's interesting. You know, it's when you're working with people who aren't, you know, in the profession of acting and haven't sort of thought about, you know, the craft for 15 years or something. I think it's a different experience to kind of watch the film. It's sort of almost is more natural. I don't think she picks apart the kind of interior structure of the performance.
Did she tell you made a good movie?
She told me that it needed to have more jokes.
Right.
We tried, when we were developing the narration, I showed it to her and just had her narrate live without me telling her what she was going to do. She started adding in a bunch of, you know, fart jokes, and, and she was like, "I'm trying to help you out right now, and add a little humor here. There's not enough jokes." But we love it. I mean, whenever we watch it together, what we do is we hold hands, and whenever something explodes, we try to shock each other, and we lip sync along with everything.
Oh, very
It's like this game. I don't know, the whole thing was really the two of us going into this make-believe world, and it still sort of feels that way, that we're pretending to be a director and an actress, but at some point, you know.
But look what happened.
I know, look what happens.
In casting Wink, you had to have, I mean, the role is complicated because he's a hard man, but we have to love him and care about him, even though we wouldn't agree with everything, all of his choices. We have to believe in his essential goodness. So how did you figure out how to cast that?
It was interesting. I mean, we actually got it completely wrong initially, and we were looking at. I mean, first of all, that was always supposed to be a trained actor, just because of how dynamic that role is. We didn't think that a non-professional could pull it off, and you know, the direction we were going was trying to find someone who was that hard and that crazy, and then, you know, and then we would sort of direct towards a place of sweetness. And I think it was her that kind of taught us that didn't work. It was in the early rehearsals, she would really not respond to that, and she would get scared and not be able to act. And what we realized, you know, Dwight, who we knew, Dwight's a baker. He owns a bakery across the street from where we were doing our casting office, and he is the sweetest, most welcoming, you know, just this wonderful, warm person. And I think we didn't consider him because of that. And then when we brought him in to work with her, immediately you saw her performance light up, and we realized that he had the ability to go to this dark place, but you know, that essential goodness of his actual character was gonna hold you somehow. You know, I mean, and I think it does, because when you meet him in person, it's the sweetest, most wonderful man in the world, and so I think that holds that character from, you know, tumbling down the staircase or whatever.
The movie is about holding out, about standing your ground over and over, and I because I know that part of the country and have fished there, and I kept thinking how it was specific to that place, but it's not really. This is a universal sort of problem, which is everyone wants to come in and make things a little bit different, help you on your way. I mean, did you always see the film as having fairly universal themes, or you made something about a place and I'm just assigning that meaning to it?
No, we wanted to, I mean, I think we want the film to operate in the realm of folklore and myth and have this, I like films that play as iconography, and so, I think that we, for me, especially because I'm not from, this isn't my region, to me, it connects to when I go back home to New York and I go by, my favorite bar, and my favorite bar is now a Jamba Juice. It's the same feeling of your home disappearing, and so I do think it's a problem that exists in an extreme way when you have, the sea reclaiming, the land in South Louisiana, the, tsunamis in Japan, like these places that are actually physically getting assaulted by nature, but it's also, happening, just the connection to history and connection to roots and connection to home is something that I think is at play everywhere, and so I do feel like, we wanted to create a hero and a myth that addressed, that stand by me, hold on, issue.
The threat is natural and metaphysical and all these things, but it's sort of real because the BP oil spill happened like the week before?
Day one.
Day one.
Deepwater and Beast of the Southern Wild exploded on the same day.
So we should blame you for the oil spill. I was there the week before, and in that same area, and I just thought about what was going on there. And one of the things I didn't think about is someone is making a movie there.
Yeah. It was a really, the way that it intersected was truly. It was bizarre is one word, but it was emotional. It was really the town that we were shooting in was tangibly on the brink of the story happening to it. It was, it really seemed, there was a day when they announced that they were going to close fishing in this town for 10 years, and this is a fishing town. It exists to fish, and it would go away if the fishing was, if that had actually happened, there would be no more Ile de Jean Charles, Pointe-Noire, like people would have moved inland, I think. And so it was very tangible as we were shooting the film, that the story could actually happen right under our feet. So
when you pull apart the story and say, well, there's this sort of part of America that's cut off, but it's somehow connected to global warming, and then these giant pigs from the past will come, and she'll come face to face. It all sounds like nonsense. It sounds like the craziest thing in the world, and yet it works. So to the extent, what did you and your colleagues do? Because if you had told me the story beforehand, I would have just said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
A lot, yeah. That we've had that conversation a few times.
Yes.
It was never. One of the horrible lessons you get taught when you start to try to make films, that you have to be able to fit your film on a business card, like write what it's about, and if it doesn't fit there, then you don't have anything.
Right.
And this definitely did not work that way. What it took is these guys, this company called Cinereach that's in New York, saw my short film, and I don't know how we pulled this off. We convinced them that when we told them the idea for the movie, they had to be in New Orleans, and so we brought them down.
Oh, very good.
To New
well
Orleans.
Played.
We were hanging out in the Bywater for 6 hours, and
you fed them a bunch of whiskey.
Yeah, and we just ranted about what it was going to feel like, which is the only thing that we were ever really able to explain, is that, this is going to be like you know, a room of people singing together or something. You know, it's gonna feel, it's this sort of, it's this weird movie, but it's about hope and it's about unity, and it's gonna have this emotional swell to it. But there was no way that you can't really explain that in an office. So it was important that we got somewhere where we could just kind of rant about that, and somehow over that process, that whole team sort of got together and said, yeah, this seems impossible. We don't know how it's going to work, and obviously it doesn't make any business sense, but you know, we believe in this, that this feeling can get created in this story, and so let's try it.
You and Lucy wrote the story, but you got a lot of, you know, you have a collective of people you worked with. You had the real people there helping you figure out how do you make a truck float, how do you make... What I'm wondering about is on a leadership level is were people saying, this is really cool and this is really fun, or this is really stupid and why are we doing all this stuff?
There wasn't a lot of stupid. There was a lot of this is really hard, you know. But it was, I mean... Well,
you're filming in a swamp. So
yeah, we're filming in the swamps, and it's 110, I mean, all those things. You know, you're in mosquitoes, in the town of Mosquito. People don't live there. It's a mosquito town. And it was tough, but it was, I mean, like, that was, people got into it knowing what, the whole idea of making the film was never kind of the end goal. It was like, we're gonna go on this adventure, we're gonna live in this place, we're gonna shoot on the water, we're gonna sort of, we're gonna get to live this story that we wrote. You know, so I mean, I think that, I mean, there was a tangible panic and fear that the whole thing was gonna fall apart and that we weren't gonna finish, you know?
Why?
Just because every day was, you know, it was like a battle. I mean, you're on a battle. It's not a, it's like the set is not this intellectual place where we're sort of like, oh, let's dolly, no, like 6 more centimeters to the right. It's you're dealing with the current and the storms and weather and all these things where your schedule is getting shattered by, you know, children and animals and water and all those things that happen. So, you know, you sort of have this map when you start a film of this is how it's going to go, and we actually have that document framed because it just looks like a surrealist painting of days being moved around and things like that. So, you know, but it was like it was a mission, you know. It was it was never a kind of it wasn't this sort of delicate perfection thing. It was a mission, and everybody who came down. You know, it is the story. You know, I mean, the story of these characters is very much inspired by the people that work together to make the films, and so it's kind of similar attitude of, you know, we're just going to charge and.
But there is a hand-cranked, handcrafted quality to everything, and there's something very special about your special effects, and one of the things I heard, I don't know if this is true, but when the Aurochs are coming, I don't want to spoil the movie magic, but were they like on a human-powered treadmill?
Yes.
So explain the apparatus to me.
Well, the treadmill is just, you know, it's a green screen treadmill with a fella on a bicycle pedaling. The more complicated mechanism is the baby pig that had to be trained to run on that treadmill.
Okay. What'd you do, beat him a lot? Or?
No, you stroke his stomach and you feed him with a milk bottle. And it's actually similar to a movie audience. They actually will do anything for popcorn.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, but...
I'm one of those people.
I know, me too.
I'm hopeless when there's a bucket of popcorn.
Exactly. I really related to the pig. I mean, all the emotion that you see in their eyes is that, you know,
see, but when I heard about that, I thought, well, that's a bit too much, that it's human-powered. But you never know at what point the difference between mania or craziness and magic. And so because if I'm standing there and say, and then the treadmill will be human-powered by a bicycle, and I just say, why? But something about that ethos or that aesthetic worked.
Well, you know, I think my theory is always that, you know, everything should sort of emerge from the characters. And so when we would hit those problems, you know, when you're trying to fit, you know, a gigantic epic into this tiny little, you know, budget, and essentially you're constantly asking, you know, the question I would try to ask myself is, how would Hush Puppy do this? You know, she wouldn't pull out her iBook and, you know,
Right.
do it in After Effects. She would build it with whatever was around. And so even the sort of special effects side of the film, we tried to create things in the same spirit that the characters would have created them. And, you know, even though they don't, you know, if you put that shot in Avengers, it would probably look pretty clunky, but, you know, because it sort of emerges organically from the world of the characters and the world of the movie, it just got the right, you know, personality to it, you know, and I think personality goes a long way with special effects.
We have to wrap up pretty quick, but the of all the lies that you told to get this movie made, it'll be cool, it's a great story, we can shoot it, we can work with a 6-year-old. And then at the end of it, you probably had to say, and lots of people will come and see it. And the weird thing is, they did.
Yeah,
So what-
I don't think I ever even told anybody that. So that actually is even beyond the most bold.
But you're racing around the world right now, and everyone's coming to see your movie. And so you've heard from them. What are they coming to see? Because this is about a really specific place, about a really specific thing that I had my own buy-in to, but its appeal is global. So what are people seeing in your little movie?
I think it's you know, it's the film really celebrates like a really visceral type of freedom, you know, and it's something that certainly comes from South Louisiana, but I think is something that everybody can relate to. You know, there's this fearlessness to the characters and this fearlessness to the people that made the film, and you know, and it gives you a kind of feeling of you know, when you feel really free, you feel this kind of ecstatic thing, you know, that happens when you're at like a great concert and you stop thinking, you just get overwhelmed by something, and that was what we were trying to do, and I think I don't know, it's traveling like a pop song, you know, it just something happens in the chords and people are feeling the feeling, which is inarticulate, but that's like what Sam Cooke said too, you know, so.
Here's my little BS theory about it, is we want, when we come into the movie theater, for something magical to take place. And every once in a while, there's a movie that reminds us that the vocabulary of film is vast, and that anything can happen if you get the right people together and you work hard enough. And I think your film, the film that you guys made, serves as a reminder that a cinema can take you completely and totally to another place. I think you guys should be so proud of what you pulled off, and we're thrilled that you came to talk to us about it.
Thank you.